How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Samach Beis, Daf 62 of Masechta BavaBasra. Friends, listen. Listen. Today's Daf Pashit. You need diagrams. Like I'm using the art scroll. It's like Erevin. It's like Masechta Erevin. I'll try my best to explain, but like you push it, you just need the diagrams. It's so hard to explain, but I'll do what I can. But a picture is worth 1,000 words. I think that's what they say, right? All right, here we go. So we're going to start on Daf Samach Beis Amid Aleph. Says the Gemara, top line of the Daf. Motzai lo meitzer echad orich u meitzer echad kotzer amarav lo kana ele kneged akotzer amru le Rav Kahana v'Rav Asi l'Rav v'yikne kneged Rosh Tor shosik Rav. Okay, fine. Basically, I'm just going to be looking at a diagram and just like trying to describe the diagram. So I'm looking at this diagram, and what I see in this diagram is that you have a field in the middle, okay? And I'm not even going to say Shimon selling anything to Reuven. I'm just going to say you have a buyer and a seller, okay? Because we're going to need Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, and even Yehuda. Not yet Yehuda, but Yehuda very soon. Again, I'm just looking at the diagram. So you have a seller is selling a field to a buyer, and he describes to the buyer, he says, look, I'm selling you this field. Which field? Well, a field that on its eastern border, it's the entirety of the eastern border, I guess from north to south, right? So the entirety of the eastern border borders Reuven's field. On the western border, half of it borders Shimon's field, and half of it borders Levi's field, right? So meaning to the west of the field that I'm selling you, you know that, right? The top half is Levi, right? The to the left, right? On the western border of the field that I'm selling you, half of the western border would be Levi, the boundary of Levi's field, and half of it would be the boundary of Shimon's field. So now he says, I am selling you. So here's the thing. So what he tells him though, back up a little bit. So what the seller tells the buyer is that the field that I'm selling you, the eastern border is Reuven's field and the western border is Shimon's field. Now, Shimon's field is really only half of the western border. Again, he's selling the seller is because the other half would be Levi's field, but the thing is that the seller tells the buyer, the field that I'm selling you on the eastern border is Reuven's field, on the western border is Shimon's field. Now, he doesn't say anything about Levi's field. Now, Shimon's field is only half of the western border. Reuven's field is the entirety of the eastern border. So Rav says, look, we have to go with the lowest common denominator. He didn't say anything about Levi's field, which means that the upper half of the western border is not going to be included in the sale. So what's included? The lower half of the western border. So if we draw a straight line halfway halfway between north and south on the western border, and draw a straight line halfway between north and south on the eastern border. So basically, the seller is selling to the buyer half of the field, right? Because you basically have to go with the lowest common denominator. The seller didn't say anything about Levi's field. He only mentioned Shimon's field and Reuven's field. So Shimon's field only borders half of the western border. So if you draw a straight line, basically the seller is selling the buyer half of the field. But then who is it? Rav Kahana and Rav Asi asked Rav, but wait, can't you theoretically say that, okay, so the seller says to the buyer, I'm selling you a field that Reuven's field is on the eastern border, Shimon's field is on the western border. But Reuven's field is the entirety of the eastern border. From the north to the south, the entirety is Reuven's field. Now, on the western border, he says he only mentioned Shimon's field. Now, Shimon's field goes halfway between south and north on the western border. So can't you make it more like a trapezoid? Can't you draw a diagonal line from where Shimon's field ends to the top right corner of where Reuven's border ends? So basically, it wouldn't be selling only the half of the field, but rather it would be more like a trapezoid. It would be half a field plus like a right triangle to get to the hypotenuse, to get to the top right corner. And Rav was quiet. He sounds like he basically said it's not a good point. So again, so let's read it inside. So Matzulo Meitzer Echad Aruch Meitzer Echad Kotzer. If the seller basically described the borders of the field, one of them being long and one of them being short, meaning he says the field right to the right, on the eastern border of the field is Reuven's field, and that's the entire eastern border, and on the western border of the field is Shimon's field, but Shimon's field is only half of the western. So basically, right? So he says Meitzer Echad Aruch, right? So the eastern border is long. Meitzer Echad Kotzer, and the western border is short. It's only half of the eastern border. So Amar Rav says Rav lo kana ela keneged akotzer. So Rav says you basically draw a straight line where the shorter border ends, where the western border ends, and basically he only is selling half of the field, the lower half of the field. So Amru le Rav Kana Ravasi le Rav Kana and Ravasi say to Rav Vikne Kineged Rosh Tor. Why don't you basically make a diagonal line from where Shimon's property ends to the top right, to the northern part of the eastern border, and you'll have more of like a trapezoid. Shasik Rav, and Rav was quiet. Umode Rav, however, Rav admits that if it was different. So now I'm going to describe the next diagram. In this diagram, both the eastern border and the western border there are two fields there. Okay, so if on the eastern border, the bottom half is Reuven's, the top half is Shimon's. Okay, so if the seller says to the buyer, I am selling you a field that is bordered on the right by Reuven's field for half of the eastern border and Shimon's field on the other half of the eastern border, and on the western border is Levi's field on the bottom half of the western border, and Yehuda's field on the top half of the western border. But now, what he says to him, however, is he only mentions Reuven and Levi, I think, right? So again, so what does it say? Umod de Rav, that Rav would admit though. Oh no, I think he mentions Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Heicha Umod de Rav, Heicha deika Meitzer Reuven v'Shimon michad gisa. That if on the eastern border of the field that he's selling is Reuven and Shimon's fields, umeitzer Levi v'Yehuda michad gisa, and on the western border of the field that he's selling is Yehuda and Levi's fields. But I think the point is he only mentions though but he mentions Reuven's field, Shimon's field, and Levi's field, but he leaves out Yehuda's field. Well, then certainly in that case, midahavale lemichtav le de Reuven keneged Levi, de Shimon keneged Yehuda, v'lo chasav le shmamina keneged Rosh Tor hu de Amar le. Meaning, if he was only selling half of the field, then he would have mentioned Reuven and Levi's, right? The field that I'm selling you is bordered on the right by Reuven's field and on the left by Levi's field. So if that's the case, then he's only selling half of the field, right? Or if he says it's bordered by Shimon's field and Yehuda's field, so he's only selling half of the field. But if he says that it's bordered, I think the point is that he says that it's bordered by Reuven and Shimon on the right and Levi on the left, but he leaves out Yehuda, so then certainly it is going to be a trapezoid. Let me just make sure I said that. Okay. If the seller intended to sell the northern half of the field, he would have mentioned only the fields of Shimon and Yehuda, not the fields of Reuven or Levi. Okay, that's only the northern half of the field. He would have mentioned only the fields of Shimon and Yehuda, right, and not the fields of Reuven or Levi. So according to those, right, I think the point is that he mentions. Wait, let me just. I'm pretty sure that what I said is correct. Anyways, right, where the abandoned belong to Reuven and Shimon on one side, and the field being okay, Levi and Yehuda. Okay, come on, drew one boundary long, mentioning the fields of both Reuven and Shimon. Yeah, exactly. Mentioning the field of Levi, but not that of Yehuda. Yeah, it's exactly what I said. Okay. Fine. All right. Gewaldig. So, all right. That's the deal. Okay. That's the deal. Okay. So those were those diagrams. Okay. More diagrams. Meitzer Ruvain Mizrach Umayrav, Meitzer Shimon Sofin Vidarim. So now, if the seller tells the buyer, I am selling you a field that is bordered on the eastern border and the western border by fields belonging to Ruvain, Umeitzer Shimon Sofin Vidarim, and on the northern border and southern border, the field is bordered by Shimon's fields on the northern and southern borders. Okay, so he says, so the seller tells the buyer, I'm selling you a field that to the right and the left there are fields owned by Reuven, and to the north and the south there are fields owned by Shimon. The seller must write to the buyer, Meitzer Reuven Ruchen Train, Umeitzer Shimon Ruchen Train, that I'm selling you a field that is bordered on two sides by Reuven and on two sides by Shimon. But if he only mentions that it's bordered by Reuven and Shimon, but he doesn't dafka mention on both sides, well then maybe he's only selling him half of the field. Right? If you could, there's basically four possibilities, right? Imagine like a triangle, right? Take the square field and you basically cut it into two triangles. One of the triangles he'd be selling to the buyer, and one of them he wouldn't, because if, let's say, I don't know, let's say draw a triangle from the northwest to the southeast, okay? And let's say you take the top half, so the top one would be bordering Shimon, and Reuven, whatever. You have to look at a diagram. But basically there's four possibilities of how to divide that up, where in half, so that there only be one border with Reuven and one border with Shimon. But so therefore, if he's selling him the whole field, he would have to say that it is bordered by Reuven on two sides and Shimon on two sides. That way he's selling the whole field. But if he only mentions that it's bordered by Reuven and Shimon, so then he'd only be selling half of the field. Okay? More diagrams. What if he only pointed out, what if he only defined the corners? The northeast, the northwest, the southwest, the southeast corners. So are we saying, well, since he mentioned all four corners, he's selling the whole field? By the way, these are going to be tekus. Since he mentioned all four corners, he's selling the whole field? Or do we say that no, you just make an X between the corners, and he's only selling him an X? Okay. So, Kimin Gammau, or what if he did like the two corners kind of? So like if he described like the top half of the western boundary and the left half of the northern boundary, as well as the bottom half of the eastern boundary and the right half of the southern boundary. So I don't even know. You have to look at a diagram. But basically like opposite corners, essentially. So do we say, well, since there's a little bit on each side, right? Because the top half of the western side, so you got some of the west, and the left half of the northern side, so you got some of the north, and you have the bottom half of the eastern side, so you got some of the east, and you have the right half of the southern side, so you have some of the south. So because there's a shtickle from each side, so maybe he's selling the whole field, or maybe you just draw lines from where each half ends, and you basically sell like, I wonder what percentage of the field that's an interesting question. What area of the field that would be? That's actually an interesting question. Well, that would be fun. That would be a fun little challenge. I wonder. Meaning, let's say the field is like 100 amas by 100 amas. So that has an area of 100 times 100 is 10,000, I guess. So an area of 10,000. But if you then you use Pythagorean's theorem, right? A squared plus B squared is equal C squared. That's how you get the length of the third thing. How do you get the area of a triangle? The area of a triangle. Is it just like the area of a square divided by 2? Why not? If it's a right triangle? Well, all triangle... No, that's not true. Not all triangles. No, only right triangles. Right. Okay, but this is a right triangle. Okay, so just do it that way. That should work. Oh, that's actually really easy. That's really easy. Basically, if we say that it's 100 amas by 100 amas, is the area of the whole. I don't know what this has to do with the daf. I'm just curious now. So, sorry, bear with me for a second. If it's 100 amas by 100 amas, so 100 times 100 is 10,000, right? 100 times 10 would be 1,000. 100 times 100 would be 10,000. Now, there are two like triangles there in the opposite corners. So each triangle would be half, each side would be half of that. So let's say 50 amas for each side. Now, if it would be a square, so it would be 50 times 50, which would be 5 times 25, 2,500. So, but the thing is, it's only half of that. So, but there's actually two of those triangles. So why don't we just say 2,500? So, okay, so 10,000 minus 2,500 would be 7,500. So the area between, and that's kind of, no, it is kind of, so 7,500 would be the area. The area, so it is kind of relevant actually. No, it is totally relevant. It is relevant. So meaning, do we say that because there's a shtickle on each of the four sides, he's selling the whole field, or is only selling 75% of it, right? No, I'm happy we did the math. And I hope I got it right. But basically, he's selling the area between those corners, which is basically 7,500 out of 10,000, if it's 100 amas by 100 amas, in terms of the area, which is 75% of it. So is he selling the whole field or just 75% of it? Okay, one more diagram here, and then we're done for now, I guess, with the diagrams. Okay, what if it's like, oh gosh, okay, again, I'll just look at the diagram and explain it. What if it's like the right half of the northern border, the top half of the eastern border, the left half of the northern border, the top half of the eastern border, the right half of the southern border, and the bottom half of the western border. So again, there's a shtickle on each side. So do we say because there's a shtickle on each side, he's basically selling the whole field? Or do we say that basically you would like draw triangles opposite, like with like each of those shtickles, and basically it would only be half the field? And so what do we say? We say, ich weiß nicht. Motzer lo meitzer rishon, umeitzer sheni, umeitzer shlishi, umeitzer vi lo motzar lo. Okay, I'm going to read that again because I don't remember what I just read. Matzah lo meitzer rishon, umeitzer sheni, umeitzer shlishi, umeitzer rishon lo motzar lo. Okay, so what if I think we can go back to Shimon and Reuven now. Yeah. Let's just go back to Shimon being the seller, Reuven being the buyer. Yeah. Shimon is selling his field to Reuven, and he describes the field, and he says that, and he describes the eastern border, the southern border, the western border, but he doesn't say anything about the northern border. So the shaila is, what's with that strip of land that would be for the northern border? That strip of land, although it's interesting, we're going to see different opinions, but the question is, what do we do with this scenario? So again, Matzalo Meitzer Rishon, Shimon basically describes, let's say, the eastern border, Umeitzer Sheni in the southern border, Umeitzer Shlishi in the western border, Umeitzer Avi lo Matzalo, but he didn't define the northern border of the field. So Amar Rav says, Rav, Kona hakol chutz mimeitzer Ravi. So Rav says that Reuven purchases the entire field, so the eastern border, the southern border, the western border, and everything between. But he doesn't acquire the strip of land that would serve as the northern border. That Shimon retains. And Shmuel says, no, even the northern border, even though it wasn't defined, but memele, all the other borders were defined, and the northern border is just a straight line between the eastern and western, right? The top of the eastern and western borders. So that would be included as well as part of the sale. Rav Asi has an interesting opinion. Lo kana ella telem echad al pnei kula. Rav Asi actually says that Reuven only purchases the eastern border, the southern border, and the western border, nothing else. The rest of the field and the northern border, Shimon retains. Savar Karab, because Rav Asi holds like Rav, the Amar Shayure Shire, that Rav Asi holds like Rav, who says that Shimon keeps the northern border for himself. Umi the Shire, b'meitzer, Shire nami b'chule. And since and being that he kept the northern border, guess what? He didn't just keep the northern border, he also kept the rest of the field. The only thing that he sold to Reuven is what he defined. The eastern border, the southern border, and the western border, and that's it. The northern border and the rest of the entire field, Shimon retains. Omar Rave says Rave. Hilchisa says Rave that the halacha is like Rav. Kana akol chutz mimetzer revi'i. That Ruvain acquires the whole field, but not the northern border. Not a strip of land that would be the northern border. Shimon retains that. But v'lo amaron elo delo mivla. But when we say that Shimon retains the northern border, that's only if the northern border is not, I don't really know how to define this in words in a clear way, but it's only if the northern border is like jutting out. It is not like absorbed between the eastern and western borders. It's like jutting out. I'll just say it's jutting out and it's not absorbed. Hopefully that'll work. Aval mivla, but if it's absorbed in the field between the eastern and western borders, well then, kana, it would be included in the sale to Reuven. And even when it is jutting out, and we say in that case it belongs to Shimon, even then, lo amar, and we only say it belongs to Shimon, ela deika ole richba de dikla. If there's a hedge of palms on it, then it belongs. Then Shimon retains it. Vavitisha kabin, or it's large enough to plant 9 kavs worth of plantings. But if that northern strip, even though it's jutting out and it is not absorbed with the rest of the field, it's jutting out, but if it's not large enough to plant 9 kavs and there's no hedge of palms, well then that would also be included in the sale, even though it's jutting out. So kana would be included in the sale. Michlal d'chimuvla, implying that when it is absorbed with the rest of the field, well then it's automatically included in the sale. Afagav de'ika ale richba dedikla, even though there is a hedge of palms, v'havet tishas kabin, it is large enough to plant 9 kavs, nonetheless kana. If it's absorbed, it's kana. So according to Rava, we paskin like Rav that the northern border would be excluded, or really the fourth border. I'm just saying northern so that we have some kind of reference. So Rava paskins like Rav that the northern border would be excluded, but it's in a specific case. It's when it's jutting out and it's not large enough to plant 9 kavs, and there's no hedge of palms. Okay. Ikadamri. There are those who say, Omar Rava, that what Rava said is, Hilchasa, that the halacha is actually like Shmuel. Kana hakol vafilu meitzer revi'i. That he's take kone everything. The whole field, and the eastern border, the southern border, the western border, and even the northern border. But when we say, however, that the northern border is included in the sale, v'lo amarin elo de mivla. That's only when the northern border is absorbed with the rest of the field. Aval lo mivla, but if it's jutting out, well then lo kani, it would not be included with the in the sale. V'chi mivla, and even when it is absorbed, Nami lo amar, we only say ela deleka olea richba de dikla velo avitishas kabin. It would only be included in the sale if both there's no hedge of palms and it is not large enough to plant 9 kavs. Aval ika olea richba de dikla, but even if there is a hedge of palms, or it's large enough to plant 9 kavs, lo kana, then it would not be included in the sale. Michlal dechi lo muvla, implying that when it is jutting out, afagav deleka alea richba dedikla, that even though there is no hedge of palms, v'lo avetishas kabin, and there's not, it's not large enough to plant 9 kavs, lo, kani, still it would not be included in the sale. So according to the Ika de Amre, the northern hedge is included in the sale, but only when it is absorbed in the with the rest of the field, and only if there's nothing on it. Okay. Fine. So what we can, so between the two versions of Rava, one second. Okay, so Shamina mitavai lishne de Rava, the besade lo shayev lo midi. Okay, so we learn after, so between the two psaks of Rava, so we see that in terms of the field itself, for sure that's included in the sale, right? Between Rava's two Lashotos, so there was, the Shiloh was really about the northern border. But in terms of the field itself, that's included. It's not like Ravasi who says that it's not included. It is included. Okay, that where the field is, that where the northern border is absorbed in the field, and there's no palm edges, and it's not large enough to plant 9 calves, well then, certainly kana, it's going to be included in the sale. Lo mivlan, if it's jutting out, and there is a palm hedge, or it's large enough for teskabin, well then lo kana. Shimon retained that for himself. But mivla v'ikaleh, but if it's absorbed in the field, but there's palm edges or tishakabin on it, large enough for tishakabin, lo mivla, or if it's jutting out v'lekaleh, but there's nothing on it. So itmil al-haigisa, vidmil al-haigisa. So it depends if it's based on the first lashon or the second lashon, whether it be included in the sale or not. True to the dining, and it's up to Bezdin to decide. All right. Well, that was the Samach Beis of Masechta BavaBasra. Be'etzem, it was like kind of okay. We needed a bunch of diagrams to figure out like what's included in sales and what isn't. Peace out.